another one that pops to mind, the two examples, crop circles.
Crop circles.
People have gotten out there and said, "Look, we did this.
Yeah,
here's how we did it."
Guys that did it
you go out.
came out. They can repeat it at will. But crop circle believers refuse to accept that it was actually done by the people who now step forward and not only claim responsibility, but show how these miraculous patterns in wheat that the believers claimed could not be duplicated by human beings were in fact created by human beings with a board and a rope. Bigfoot.
As in the Sasquatch and everything like that.
Has there been an admission? Know there's a particular film.
Yes, the main film that's always used. The guy who actually did that recently died. Yeah. And his family came forward and said, "Yeah, look, it was our grandpa. He got out there with a gorilla suit."
Yeah. The problem in all those cases is not science being closed-minded. It's not science having a bias against those things. The problem is that science has actually shown, or people have come forward and admitted that those things were frauds, and yet the believers won't let go. That's the problem. Replicability.
If you did it once, you should be able to do it again.
Yeah, if doing X made Y happen once, it should be able to be repeated. The burden of proof. This is such a big one.
Yes.
Particularly for us, because Christians and religious people in general, of course, Christians who we mostly argue with because they're the majority in our country, are always trying to dodge this.
Yes.
The burden of proof always rests with the claimant. That's the person claiming that they know something to exist or to be the case, right? They claim that knowledge. The reason why is because the absence of disconfirming evidence is not the same as the presence of confirming evidence. Christians are always going, and other religionists are always going, "You can't prove me wrong." That is not the point. If you claim that you know something, it is your job then to prove it to others. And if you can't, you've got no business complaining that others won't believe you. It's your job. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This is a big kind of science-focused issue. A claim which, if true, would overturn an idea that appears to be highly reliable after numerous scientific tests is an extraordinary claim. Okay. A lot of people don't understand this one. They think extraordinary means, exciting. No, extraordinary doesn't mean exciting. Extraordinary means rare. No, actually, extraordinary doesn't mean rare. Extraordinary means, look, we've established this body of understanding, right? We've got this block of knowledge which we have put together after many years of testing and retesting and analysis and argumentation and it seems really, really solid. And you come along with an idea that blows that out of the water, right? Well, what that means is you've got to overcome the weight of all the existing evidence that says you're full of it. And if you can't, then you don't have enough evidence.
Yeah.
Right? Einstein's not amazing just because he had the crazy white hair. Right? Einstein is amazing because he figured out that something that was that subtle. I mean, when you're talking about quantum mechanics, it's something going on very, very tiny scales that has very, very slight influence on what we see, but does happen to be true. And he saw that there were inconsistencies in the established understanding. He hypothesized what could account for those inconsistencies, put forward a theory, and it turned out to be right. And we knew that once it was confirmed by evidence.
Yes.
Extraordinary evidence. Personal testimony is not sufficient. Human beings can lie and make mistakes. No amount of expertise in any field is a guarantee of human infallibility, and expertise does not preclude lying. Therefore, a person's credentials, knowledge, and experience cannot, in themselves, be taken as sufficient evidence to establish the truth of a claim. Oh my gosh, there are so many people going around saying, because famous person X said Y, therefore Y is true. No, it doesn't matter who said it. Yeah. Even stupid people can say things that are true, Likewise, smart people can say things that are wrong.
Yeah.
What really matters is all this other stuff. You know, it has to be, the claim has to be falsifiable, it has to be logical, the evidence has to be comprehensive, it has to be evaluated honestly, it has to be, the results, if there's experimental evidence, those results have to be repeatable by other people doing the same experiment. The burden of proof for all of this is on the shoulder of the person who's making the claim, and the amount of evidence necessary, if it's going to overturn some big body of established knowledge, has to be big.
Yeah. Most common with that is personal experience with God.
Yes.
I can't prove it, but I had a personal experience.
Yeah, right. So. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can believe whatever you want about your own personal experiences, but you've got no
not evidence.
You've got no business being offended if others do not take your claim as proof. Finally, materialism. This is not, as many would have us believe, a prejudice against the idea of supernatural forces. Scientists are always being slandered in that regard, saying, well, you can't understand my way of seeing things because your philosophy of science a priori rejects the idea that anything supernatural could be going on. That's not true. Scientists test supernatural claims all the time. Forces that cannot be understood or predicted cannot, by definition, be tested for. I mean, suppose you've got two chemicals, right, in certain proportions, and you mix them together 100 times, and 99 times out of 100, you get, the result is a muddy green goo, right? Okay, if you set aside concerns about mysterious individual supernatural entities fiddling with the results for reasons that we can't understand, and I'm talking God here, right? If you set aside the idea that God might have had some special personal reason why that 100th mixture shouldn't come out the same, right? Then what you've got is a body of evidence that you can evaluate on the basis of the results. You can say, well, we don't necessarily know why the last one didn't turn out the same, but it is fair to say that if you mix these two things together in these proportions, you're going to get the green goo. Yeah. If you insist on keeping in play the idea that there's mysterious, invisible things wafting around with their own agendas, fiddling with experimental results, you can't draw any conclusions. It's just as likely that the first 99 were the result of supernatural influence, if that's the conditions that we have to accept when we do the experiment. That is what materialism in science means. It means, look, we're not claiming absolutely for sure that there are no invisible supernatural entities fiddling with the results. It's just we can't possibly account for that. We can't set up a control experiment over here where that's not going to happen because we don't know that those mysterious entities can't go over there and screw with the control experiment. We don't know that. There's no way to know that. So we ignore it. That's it, period. That is all materialism means in science. All of these are fine ideas, many of which have been known to and of help to humanity throughout recorded history. But ever since all of these techniques were first brought together and systematized as what we call science, humanity has benefited even more greatly from them. The acceleration of human knowledge and technology since the introduction of formal science is undeniable by anyone with a basic knowledge of human history. Can they name even one human achievement of equal significance and power that was accomplished by some other way of knowing, not based on the core principles of science? The answer is no. And yet they insist that science is somehow overrated. While science earns respect for itself by benefiting mankind in obvious and major ways, it marginalizes the myths and superstitions that these people are still clinging to. Rather than bringing their own beliefs in line with a rational examination of all the available evidence, they choose to attack the very idea of rationally examining evidence. They want their own ridiculous beliefs treated with equal respect, and they're willing to ignore centuries of human progress to do it.